Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club. I am your host, one of your hosts, Dean, joined by the lovely Miss Boo. Becky, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dean?
I'm doing really good, and just like every week, we take turns picking one of my Dean's art house picks and one of Becky's blockbusters, and we see which one, I guess, we like better. And also helps us expose each other a little bit more different kinds of movies.
And this week it's your turn for your art house pick.
It is my turn for one of my art house picks.
How excited are you for your
Incredibly excited, because I've been trying to get you to watch this movie for a long time, and I finally got you to do it.
You did. It only took a podcast to get me to watch it.
I know. It's really nice. It doesn't have to strong-arm you at all. So, the movie we're going to be watching today, it's probably not a traditional art house piece, but it is an obscure indie film that I don't think a lot of people have seen. This is Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. It came out in 2006, and I believe it was directed by Scott Glosserman, and I don't think he's done much else besides this as a director.
No, I don't believe so.
Nah, it looks like this is one of his only big directorial films. Now, beyond that, I really enjoyed this movie, and I've probably seen it, probably a couple dozen times, maybe more. You could find this on YouTube if you're interested. I'm pretty sure it's free up there.
Or you can find it on Shudder.
You can, in fact, find it on Shudder. That is where I watched it.
That's also where I watched it, too. Shudder's a great place to find, different movies, like Dean's art house kind of films, or even, popular films.
Yes, we're really trying to bank in on that Shudder promotion. Just need to get the phone call. Our doors are always open.
Please, Shudder. We're waiting.
Yeah. So, Miss Boo, have you ever heard of this movie before?
Prior to you telling me about it? No, I haven't.
No? All right. Well, what did you like it, dislike it, have any good feelings about it?
Well, because it was your pick, I was kind of hesitant about it, but I watched it, and just with the opening scene alone, it had me hooked. Mm-hmm. So I ended up really liking the film.
All right. Well, now that we kind of got that little bit of things out of the way, let's get into the plot of the movie. Now, this is your first go of it, so I'm going to let you take the reins. How does this movie start, since you really enjoyed the opening?
Well, the movie is a mockumentary. You call it a mockumentary.
Oh, yeah. No, this is definitely a mockumentary film. It's a little bit of a comedy, a little bit of a thriller, a little bit of a slasher. It takes a lot, but it's all done in this really interesting mockumentary format. Think of The Office if Michael Scott was just a little more insane.
If Michael Scott was a serial killer?
Yeah, think of it like that. That's kind of how this movie wants to play its cards. Because
there are plenty of, gem faces that our lead character makes to the camera when he's being recorded, so it was nice. I definitely watched The Office right after I watched this.
You gotta get to it now. It's gonna be leaving Netflix at the end of the month.
Oh, what will I do with my life after that?
I'm actually legitimately concerned because you watch The Office more than you watch The Sunrise. Now,
it's true.
On that note, let's get going. How's this movie open?
So we jump to a voiceover of the documentary beginning, and it's our lead actress taking us to different locations that different horror movies have taken place. But in this movie, everything from the horror movies is real. So we go to Elm Street, the house where the lead actress in that movie, her next door neighbor lives, and she's trying to, get, a couple words from that man that lives there.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. We should let you know that we now have a third host on the podcast. Her name is Bing. She's a little black kitty that we picked up a couple days ago.
Yeah, we picked her up the beginning of this week. So yeah. She is our new baby and our new mascot for the podcast.
Yeah, you'll see.
Welcome to the podcast, Binks.
Yeah, you'll see plenty of pictures of her on our social media if you're interested. But yeah,
who doesn't love kitten pictures?
Exactly, they're the backbone of the internet. But yeah, so we go through and she's doing this voiceover because I think that's the main premise of this film's reality that it wants to get across. It's that Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, they're all real in this universe. Yes. All these kinds of serial killers are real, and they're treated as real, living, breathing human beings.
And I just love, kind of rehashing and, going back to Haddonfield, which is really Pasadena, California. We go to Camp Crystal Lake, which is in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. But it's just cool to see all these iconic homes, streets, and locations that, you know, we've seen in these movies hundreds of times, and they're actually real places.
Yeah, it's really interesting that because this movie plays its stuff like right to the edge of being ridiculous, but it never goes over. So it is kind of cool.
And I think you picked, you know, a good, for your first pick for Art House, I think you picked a good one because it's filled with horror Easter eggs. And that's like one of my favorite things when I'm watching movies is picking up Easter eggs from different movies, different series.
Oh yeah, like this movie is, if you're a fan of the slasher genre, the horror genre, anything like that, you're gonna dig this movie. There's so many just random references and Easter eggs that it gets better the more you watch it. Like you were saying, the neighbor in Elm Street, that's actually Kane Hodder, who is most famous for playing Jason Voorhees in like 5 or 6 out of the 10 original Friday the 13th films.
He's Jason.
He is Jason, yes. And then we also have Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger. He shows up as a main character in this film. And we have, I forget her name, but she's from Poltergeist.
Oh, we do have her name. Where is her name?
She's really famous, and she has like that very like high pitched voice, and she's like, you'll know it when you see her. But as it goes on, so what our lead actress, our main character Taylor, she is this grad student who's doing this documentary. Oh, you found her name?
Yeah, her name is Zelda Rubinstein, and she plays Mrs. Collinwood, the librarian in this movie.
Zelda Rubinstein. Zelda's a really like weird like name. Now that I think about it,
from the 20s, the 30s.
Yeah, that's like one of those weird things where it's like, Zelda. Huh. All right, but whatever. So.
But still iconic, because, I mean, you think of Poltergeist and you think of her.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm getting back on my train of thought. We're leaving the station. So, what it is Taylor, she's there with her 2 cameramen, sound guy, and they're filming for, I guess, their grad school film, a documentary about this soon-to-be famous Michael Myers-esque serial killer, Leslie Vernon. And it's out in kind of the middle of nowhere where he lives. It's very stereotypical middle America town where every one of these slasher films takes place. Like we were saying in Scream, where it's supposed to be in California, but it looks like every town USA.
Exactly.
And when they meet Leslie, who is the most energetic and nicest person in this movie, it's really weird because
he is. You wouldn't expect him to be a serial killer. You just kind of want to hang out with him and barbecue with him, and he opens with a practical joke.
Oh yeah, he opens with like a prank on him. Kind of so they come to the house. They like knock on the door and they're like, oh, is he here? And then they're like, oh wait, there's somebody who just like ducked behind the barn. And they go over and then they're like, wait, no one's here. Look up into the window, and somebody immediately walks away from the window. It's literally the setup to every creepy thing. Mm-hmm. When you go to like a haunted house thing, and then he just kind of pops out from around the corner and goes, boo, freaks him out, and he's like, don't worry guys, I do that all the time, come on in. And I think that's kind of a really interesting thing this movie does, is it examines kind of like these horror films in a very meta-textual way, where it's, hey, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, all this other stuff, they're magical bestial killers that are, beyond reason. But you gotta think about it. How much cardio do you think Michael Myers has to do to be able to run down Laurie Strode in Halloween?
But Michael doesn't even run.
He doesn't even run.
He's a speed walker. So I think that's what people need to watch out for. You don't need to watch out for the people running. You need to watch out for the speed walkers at the park, on the streets. Those might be the real, serial killers.
I mean, they're always... Yeah. I mean, if you don't run, like, that's just weird. But that's, like, the thing, because that's actually a joke in the movie where Leslie is showing them kind of how he does his thing, like, how he's prepping and what he's doing, and he does, like, all this cardio. Mm-hmm. He does all this, like, boxing and hand-to-hand training, and he reads, like, Grace. He reads all these books, Grey's Anatomy books, like things like that, medical textbooks to know how to efficiently kill somebody. And also he learns like magic tricks and things like that to, escape, disappear, get out of handcuffs.
Which is really smart when you think about it.
Well, you have to think about it in the context of all these other slasher movies. Like, how is it that, Michael Myers can always get away? Mm-hmm. How is it that Jason Voorhees is always around the corner when the person's running away? How is Freddy always, knows exactly what to do to these people to get them to run a certain direction in his labyrinth? And I think that's the thing. It's a lot of this movie, it's poking fun at all the mental gymnastics you kind of have to make for these slasher films to make sense, is because, wow, that's so gruesome and that kill is so weird, but that probably took them like weeks of planning to do. And it's kind of interesting. And that's kind of where the whole premise of the film is. You're watching a serial killer plan his night of horror. Mm-hmm. And as it goes on, it's really funny.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're probably envious of his library that we walk into when the film begins. There's books everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Like his entire house is like this old farmhouse on the edge of town that is just filled with books, filled with, memorabilia, things like that. Because he also comes off as like a fanboy of like other slashers, of Jason, Freddy, Michael.
Which, I mean, you're kind of a fanboy of horror, too.
I just like horror movies.
I definitely fangirl over horror and, Halloween stuff.
Well, yeah. But that's kind of the... I think that's the thing. This is just a love letter to horror films and slasher films. But I think we've kind of gotten through gushing about it once we meet the lead characters. We should really get into a little bit more of this plot that we have going on. Miss Boo, why don't you lead us into the next bit of movie?
So we go with Leslie, and he takes, the crew with him to stalk the girl that he's planning on making his lead girl, who's going to survive this massacre that he has planned out at the farmhouse. So he kind of, shows the crew step by step how he, mentally starts to mess with his victim, or his lead girl. Just simple tricks of, observing her and, knowing her routine. And it happens just to be a waitress at a diner in town. And he's stalked her for maybe months to kind of pick up, how she moves, how she acts. And
also pick out her crew, because he also points out the weird thing about, like, these slasher films where it's like, everybody's crew is always generally the same. It's the thing we were talking about in Scream last week. Yeah. Where there's always the survivor girl, the virginal survivor girl that's kind of, is going to live. She doesn't do drugs, she doesn't fool around, she's very focused and, resourceful. Now, we also have the slutty character, which, that's the thing about this movie, is we know basically nothing about the people we're gonna, like, eventually have Leslie kill.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a commentary about slasher movies, is because most slasher movies, we know basically nothing about the main characters. We just know they're going to be fodder for the killer.
Pretty much.
And that's what we get. We have the stereotypical, the stoners, the nerds, the jocks, the whore character, the boyfriend character, and we have the virginal girl. And he's kind of going through, and he's like, yeah, the reason we get the stoners in, we got to pad our numbers here, Everybody's guilty of padding their numbers with the slow stoners, but it's like industry standard.
No one wants weak numbers.
No one wants weak numbers. And then you have the jocks. They put up a little bit of a fight, but that's mostly so you have your, it's not boring. You don't want to just kill stoners all the time. You want some like quality kills here. And it's really funny when he's going through it, because it doesn't sound like he's talking about killing people. He sounds like he's talking shop.
Yeah.
About like hunting, or like what, oh, like a hobby. He's talking shop about like a hobby with somebody, and it's really like kind of weird, but you're kind of into it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got the hunting vibe too when I was watching the movie. I kind of felt like these people are the deer or whatever they're hunting. They're kind of out in the blind, and we're just kind of watching from, from a distance and just kind of observing, okay, they move in this pattern, they move in that pattern, and it's, no, these are human beings with lives and families, and, I'm going to take that one out, that one.
Yeah,
just
but
so nonchalant.
I think that's the thing with this movie, is that we never get the sense that this is anything unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that stems from Leslie, who's, I forget his name, Nathan Basil? Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah.
I believe it's Basil, yes.
Yes, who is fantastic in this movie.
He is. He's perfect for this.
I am so mad I don't see him. I didn't see him in more things, because he is perfect in this movie. Because it's the thing where in Friday the 13th, after like a while, you kind of start rooting for Jason.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, it's the same thing where you're just like, I don't really care about these teenagers. I just kind of want to see the money shots, Oh, how is Michael going to kill him? Where's the scare? Where's the, where's the setup, the punchline, and the joke? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And with Leslie, you immediately, like, attach yourself to him, because he is all character.
Mm-hmm.
He is, he has probably, like, the most character in the film. Even Taylor, who's our lead in the film, the female lead, we know a little bit about her. She's kind of goofy.
Mm-hmm.
She's a film student. She is... Do you think she falls for Leslie in the film?
You could totally tell. And even between the two of them, you could tell that there's attraction, there's this connection. And I thought, they might, run off together.
You really wanted that happy romantic ending?
I do. I'm a sucker for that.
I love you.
But Taylor, would you, classify her as the typical film student? You as a film student, would you say that she's, somebody that you may have met throughout your...
Oh, definitely. Somebody who's... So, I'm a film school person, and she comes off as like a typical girl who is in a film school, who is working on, like, something. I mean, we don't really get to know a lot about her. We don't even know what school she's from. We just know she's a grad student from film school, making a documentary about Leslie. And she's kind of goofy. She's really along for the ride with this. And you get the sense that she's kind of okay with what Leslie's planning on doing up to a point. Which is kind of scary, right?
Yeah, it's a little scary, but it's also kind of funny to see her, go from goofy to when they do their, like, recorded segments, she kind of turns into Barbara Walters.
Yeah, she gets
like, where does
really...
that come from?
Well, that's the thing, is she's trying to be professional in those interview segments, because this film has a section of the movie where Leslie is like, okay, or Taylor's like, okay, we're going to be all business, we're going to do the sit-down interviews of how you do your thing. And this is, I think this whole section is just them, like, taking a shit on high-minded horror critics. Because Leslie's like, oh, when we get her to the closet, we can't go into the closet, we can't attack her in there because it's safe. And they're like, well, why? Well, it's a safe place. It's, symbolic of the womb, and you're innocent in the womb. And I'm trying to invade her with my phallic object, and she has to take that away from me. She has to empower herself with this phallic knife to attack me with. Don't you see? She's empowering herself with cock. And it's one of those things where they start talking like that weird, like, you took like a couple philosophy classes and then you watch like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you're just on it, and it's fucking great.
And I mean, no lie, that is a line in the movie.
Oh, 100%. I'm quoted it almost verbatim. No meme. And it's great because you can tell Leslie is playing this as like almost completely straight, and Taylor is just kind of rolling with it. And I don't know how much of this movie was improvised or how much of it was scripted, but that's a great, like, back and forth little scene, and there's so much of that stuff in this movie. But let's get back to it a little bit, because as we're watching the movie, it's like we're seeing behind the scenes of how, like, Michael Myers sets up his movies. So,
which is an interesting concept.
It really is. And I think that's the thing I like about this movie, because I don't know of any other slasher movie that does it in this way.
No.
Where we see the whole movie from the killer's perspective, and like the trivial killer's perspective, not like, oh, we're in the POV of Michael as he's going around the house, like,
or the Blair Witch Project where it's being recorded, or Paranormal Activity. It's like we're seeing, from start to finish how these murderers set up their kills.
Yeah, and it first starts with Leslie telling him, hey, this is the part where we do the fire across the port bow. It's the warning shot. Let her know something's wrong. We don't really... She's a little scared, a little unnerved, but not enough for her to like, break. And that's the thing where they pull the scene where the survivor girl, quote unquote, goes out to take out the trash from her diner job. It's like the middle of the night. And it's the thing in every horror movie. She goes out, she throws the trash in, she thinks she sees something in the bushes. Then the door to the diner she propped open slams shut. She turns around. What was that? Turns back around to see if the guy's in the bushes still there, and he's gone. Did she really see somebody? Was she just imagining things? She doesn't know, but she's scared, and she's concerned now. And they play that exact scene, and then afterwards everybody's like, oh my god, that was so cool. Because
and you feel so bad for the girl because she's freaking out. I mean, I think that's, a lot of people's fears. You go out to take out the trash late at night, or you're locking up for the night, and, did I really see a person watching me?
In the bushes.
Is there someone out there? And then you see, the killer and this film crew, they're all in the van laughing. That was so great, full of energy.
I can't believe you pulled it off. Oh my god, that was awesome. And there's also another thing in this movie where it switches from this very strict mockumentary format to we are a actual horror film, and that's one of them, where it goes from being like this kind of weird digital camera recording thing to like 16:9 cinema scope, where they're filming the horror scenes, and that's one of them. And it happens every time Leslie is doing his thing, and it's almost I want to say it's almost a visual cue that this is going from Taylor's world to Leslie's world. And it's really cool how they do it. And
I just like how it's more cinematically pleasing on the eyes, Leslie's version, even though it's, gruesome and there's kills.
It's a lot more gruesome. It's a lot more like, there's a lot more messed up things going on. Like, because in this movie, like, yeah, Leslie's killing people. Like, that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of just rolling with it. And this is the point. So they're doing their thing, and then they go over to they're doing their interviews. Leslie's telling them what's going on, and then they're going to the library, because that's where the survivor girl, she goes to the library kind of late. She stays a little bit later. The librarian lets her hang out, and
that's where we meet Zelda.
Who's the librarian.
Mrs. Collinwood, and, our survivor girl is there asking questions because she believes that she's related to the Voorhees family.
Or, no, the Vernon family.
The Vernon family, sorry.
And it's great because Leslie sets this up, and he's like, hey, so I found this. So apparently the survivor girl, she had a great uncle who was responsible for the death of my parents. And Taylor's like, wait, really? She has a great uncle? Oh my god, this picture looks exactly like her. And Leslie's like, well, she might have a great uncle, but this certainly ain't him. I just photoshopped this. And they're like, wait, really? He's like, oh, most of what we do is CGI. And that's another one of those random little,
kind of in our biz, this is normal,
just use CGI. Yeah. There's a little poke there, and it is really funny. And then he's like, okay, this is the point of no return, because I'm actually gonna kill somebody. This is the point. This is the first kill of the movie that's meant to scare the shit out of Survivor Girl, let her know things are for real. And it's supposed to set up her wanting to be around her friends and getting away and hiding in the abandoned house, obviously for the party, to loosen up and all that.
Because, when you feel like you're being stalked, an abandoned farmhouse is exactly where you want to go to feel safe.
Exactly. So Leslie sets it up. He's in the library. He kills Miss Zelda, and as
it's
he's
a gruesome kill too.
it's
right
pretty.
Right through the back, through the neck.
She goes in, yeah, he goes in with his scythe and just ganks her. And as he's about to, walk up and approach the survivor girl to, I guess, give her the scare of a lifetime, that's when Doc Halloran, Robert Englund, shows up and yells, Leslie, and shoots at him. And then Leslie goes, disappears, suddenly teleports across the library and disappears into the night. And this is great when they go out into the van afterwards. Everybody's freaking out. They're like, dude, who was that? And he's like, I finally got my Ahab. Oh, we're doing it, boys. I finally got the guy who's he's the good to my evil. And everybody's like, dude, what's that even mean? He's like, dude, it's insane. And it's great.
Like, who's Ahab? And I was just cringing. I was like,
oh, it's so good. And I think around this point in the movie, we meet Leslie's mentor, who is Herschel from Walking Dead.
Yes, Scott Wilson.
Yes.
Plays Eugene in the movie. I love Scott Wilson.
Why don't you explain this little bit of the movie for everybody?
So, Leslie tells the film crew, hey, we're going to go walk over to my neighbor's house. He's a friend of mine. So, we're walking through trees and just kind of getting, a scope of where he lives, which is in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
Which makes it even more creepy because there's nobody around. So we finally get to the friend's house, and his wife, opens the door, and, very nice woman. She invites them in, and she says, hey, my husband's out in the back, why don't you go get him? And I'm thinking, maybe he's out in the back having a drink or having a smoke. I did not expect to see Scott Wilson being pulled up from a coffin.
He and was just,
wake up.
Yeah, and this is another thing that Leslie is, tells him, oh, why is he doing this? Oh, sometimes you go into a sensory deprivation tank to slow your breathing down, your heartbeat, so you appear dead. So, sometimes that's a pretty good thing to do if you need to hide in an ambulance to get away and then, all that stuff. And they're like, I thought you said he was retired. Why is he still doing this? And Leslie's like, oh, I have no idea. And I'm like, was that subtle sequel bait? Was that what's going on there?
Possibly. I mean, I just sat there kind of like, what the fuck? This guy just came out of a coffin.
Yeah. And they dig him up, they pull him out, and he's like, oh, God, I've been in there for 3 days. And they're like, what the hell? And then it's one of those weird scenes where you're like, I don't know why this is in the movie, but it's great because it gives the movie so much texture.
But why is he also in a suit? If you're going to be in there for 3 days, wouldn't you want to be in something a little bit more comfortable?
Maybe he was just I wanted to be fancy,
True. Maybe he knew about the documentary and he's like, hey, they might wake me up. I better be,
dressed for the success.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because he is supposed to represent that old school slasher killer. I think they say that in the movie he's supposed to be Billy from Black Christmas. That's the Easter eggs and the hints that he gives off. And he's kind of explaining, he's back in my day, it was just about, quantity. You're supposed to get in, get out. He is saying, back in his day, the 60s, 70s, all that stuff, there were no sequels.
No.
And he kind of he likes Jason and Freddy and Michael because they were able to become a legend, yes. An urban legend within the mythos of their films. And all these other things, and it's very weird because this movie is just super meta in that sense where it talks about slasher films.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that he's Billy is talking to Leslie and it's like, oh, you're going to be the new, slasher success story.
Kind of like he's passing the torch to Billy.
Or Billy's passing the torch to Leslie. Yeah. And that's kind of how this scene comes off of. And this also is one of those weird things because it also feels like Leslie and Taylor are going to go see Leslie's parents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really awkward, hey, Mom and Dad, this is my girlfriend I got from college. That's how the vibe of this scene comes off.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. But yeah, I digress.
And then we also get, another Easter egg within that scene when, Billy and Leslie and Taylor are all talking, in their living room. We see the puzzle box from Hellraiser just, on the coffee table.
Oh, yeah. Again, this movie has a bunch of blink and you missed it Easter eggs and references, and that's one of them.
Well, to take us back to the beginning, you know the turtles, when we go into Leslie's house, he talks about his pets. You know, he only has pets that he can eat. Mm-hmm. Did you pick up on their names?
No, I didn't actually catch their names.
Well, he goes, you know, I have my 2 turtles. One of them is Zoe. And I thought, you know, okay, Zoe. And then he goes, and this one's Church. And they kind of, you know, stood out to me a little bit. Well, it turns out they're nods to Pet Sematary.
Oh, yeah!
So Church is the cat from Pet Sematary. And then Zoe is the dog from Pet Sematary, too.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. Oh, this movie is fucking great.
Yeah, so I thought that was just cool. You know, you're throwing in character names, you know, so it doesn't have to be, you know, a prop or a location. It could just be...
Super. Yeah. Again, this movie is just filled with that kind of stuff. And then we also have the next little bit of story before we finally go into, like, Act 3. This is, like, to wrap up Act 2, we find out that Leslie isn't actually Leslie. Mm-hmm. He's a escaped mental patient from Reno. And he just kind of took up the Leslie Vernon, like, persona and legend to, I guess, fulfill his dream of becoming a serial killer?
Yeah, and Doc Halloran is his psychiatrist from Reno, who is chasing after Leslie because he knows just how dangerous he is.
And Leslie's excuse as to why Doc Halloran can't actually turn him in is great. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, I had a restraining order put against him. And they're like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, dude, like, it's just that easy. If he tries to arrest me or call the cops on me or go anywhere near me, he gets arrested. And
they're simple.
And I'm like, how does that work? And that's one of those weird things where I'm like, okay, I guess it kind of sort of not really makes a little bit of sense. Mm-hmm. But it's just like a really weird explanation as to like why Doc Halloran can't intervene.
Yeah.
But again, I can bitch and moan about a lot of things. This movie's pretty good. Otherwise,
and I love that Doc Halloran and Leslie are, you know, going based off the characters from Halloween. You know, where Leslie's Michael Myers
and he's Dr. Loomis.
Dr. Loomis. I mean, he's even dressed like Dr. Loomis with the trench coat and the sweater underneath, and it's just total Halloween vibes.
Well, his name is already a reference to The Shining. Mm-hmm. Doc, that's little Tommy in the movie.
Yeah. And
Halloran, that's the... It's Scatman Carruthers in The Shining, the cook.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, everybody in this movie is a reference to something, and it's great.
Another great movie.
Another great movie. You can listen to me and my other friend David talk shit about The Shining and The Thing on the Double Feature podcast. Go listen to us on Anchor. Give me money. Shameless plugs.
Shameless all the way.
Yes. And the thing is we find out that Leslie's not really who he is. Taylor confronts him. And that's kind of the, ooh, okay.
You lied to me.
You lied to me. But Leslie kind of just jumps at her and is like, look, we're going to talk about this, but not here. And it is the most, like, intimidating thing he does in the movie. Because he just kind of snaps at her. And it kind of drops that, like, friendly facade. And you're like, oh, wait. She hasn't been following around, like, the big fish in the pond. She's been following around a fucking shark. Yeah. And it's, ooh, this movie, that one is this the most, like,
that's
oh,
the
God,
first
no.
sense we get that he's dangerous. I mean, even though we have him kill the librarian, this is really the first sense that it's kind of like, oh, you better watch your back.
Yeah. And he kind of finally explains everything. He's like, look, the reason I'm doing this is because this is, like, my calling. It's the trade of the craft. Mm-hmm. What is, like, my motives are more... I don't even know if he really has motives. It's just something he needs to do.
Yeah.
He's so drawn to it, and he can't really articulate why. And it's like, he's like, it's my destiny to do this. And I just found the Leslie Vernon myth, and I just rolled with it. Mm-hmm. And this kind of is like, Taylor is still apprehensive, but she's like, okay, well, I guess I could follow you to the farmhouse, the last night, the big event, because she's followed him this far. And at this point, they're kind of intertwined in that sense where, Taylor might not actually be killing anybody, but up to this point, she's been completely complicit in setting all this up.
Yeah, she's an accomplice.
Yeah. So they decide they're gonna do it. They go to the farmhouse, and Leslie, and this is another like lighthearted thing before we kind of get into the killing, where he just goes around the farmhouse and is, yeah, so this is what's gonna happen. So
he's like, I've rigged this, I have, this little barn set up where I have weapons and, I gotta protect myself. So, I unscrewed the top of the ball hammer,
I dulled the axe, you know, as long as they don't get me good with the first shot, then I'm totally fine. It's gonna break apart. He's like, oh, all the trees with limbs that are close to the windows, I've sawed them, so as soon as you put any weight on them, they crack and the person will fall. And Taylor makes the obvious claim of, well, why don't they just bust out a window on the first floor and leave? And Leslie gives the most perfect horror movie nerd answer to this. He's like, no, they never do that. And she's like, why? And he's like, I have no idea. They just never done it. I've never seen it happen.
It's true.
Yeah. But on that note, yeah, they just always run up the stairs. I don't know why, but they do. It's really weird. You can almost set your watch to it. And he also goes into the fact that he's set up the house so the breaker will flip on command. He sets up his like base of operations, which is like a secret room behind like the closet where he'll be able to get in and out and kind of move around the house without being seen.
Yeah.
And he keeps going and going, and you kind of get the sense that, oh shit, these kids have absolutely no chance to survive Leslie.
No,
he has planned everything out to a T. And that's kind of the thing where you're like, man, I really hope Leslie gets away with this. I'm like, man, that's really cool. Because he's just so likable.
He's very likable, and you wonder, how long has he been planning this? Has this been years in the making? Has this been months in the making? He's just been dedicated to this one night.
It's really weird. It's almost like a setup to like, this is what the human will can do when you put your mind to it. And it's kind of fucked up, but whatever.
Yeah, it's still funny in a way. In this movie, it's funny.
It's funny. And as it goes on, we finally get to like the night. They're up in his base of operations, his little, secret room, and he tells them, okay, guys, this is gonna happen. There's no backing out now. I'm gonna walk through this door. I'm gonna go in on those two kids fucking, and I'm gonna kill them. Okay? And I'm gonna leave them in there so the next person who goes in here freaks out, alerts the house, and they start scrambling, and then I'm gonna start picking everybody off one by one.
Yeah.
All right? Are we in with this? And the camera guy and the sound guy are like, yeah, I guess. I mean, Taylor, are you in? And Taylor's like, yeah, okay, it's fine. And I don't think they expected what to happen.
I didn't expect it.
Where Leslie just says, okay, pulls down the mask, pulls out his scythe, walks in, bursts out from the closet, and just slaughters these two kids. Just ends their life. Blood, guts, just kills the shit out of them. And then he goes back in, and Taylor's like, what the fuck are you doing? And Leslie's like, exactly what I told you I was going to do. Did you think I was joking? You already seen me kill the librarian. Did you think I wasn't going to do this? And Taylor's like, I can't. This is so wrong, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, everybody out of the house. He drags them all out of the house. He's looking at him. He's like, okay, you guys are going to leave because this is my night. You're not going to ruin it. I've worked so hard. Oh my God, my prom dress. It's beautiful. I'm doing this. And that is how it comes off.
Night.
This is his night. And he's so excited. And he doesn't want to ruin it.
I just love when he starts shaking everybody's hands. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. And I was just like, is this guy for real? Like,
it's
come on.
So, and you believe it. He goes from this, like, psychotic Michael Myers-esque serial killer to, like, the nicest guy at the business meeting.
And he looks so sincere, too, and kind of sad that, that he's parting with, his friends that he's made in this film crew. And he's like, never going to see each other again, but it's good to know you, good to work with you.
And
it's just like...
It's crazy. And he even makes the point that he's like, look, after this night, I only have 3 options after this night. Either I'm going into hiding, I'm going to get arrested, or I'm going to be dead. There's no in between here. And you're almost like,
I hope he survives.
I hope he gets away with it. Boo's over there being like, I really hope him and Taylor like figure this out and run away together to like the Bahamas. You're like, I mean, it'd be kind of nice.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But he could hold on his own.
Exactly, which is what he proceeds to do as he goes back into the house to set up the scene of the crime so everybody's ready. And then Taylor and the film crew were like, look, we can't let him do this. We can't let him kill like 8 fucking teenagers. Like, they didn't even do anything wrong. He's just gonna kill him for no reason. He doesn't even have a good motive. And then they're like, fucking fine, we'll go take care of it. We're gonna go in, we're gonna tell him what the fuck's going on and pull him the fuck out. And that's it, because Leslie will absolutely kill us, because he's a fucking Terminator. And this is the twist of the movie that comes up.
I mean, I did not see it coming.
Same, because this movie is really smart, because you think it's like this really, like, kind of funny, awkward, nerdy, like, comedy that's like, this mockumentary style, and you find out at the end of the movie you weren't watching a comedy, you were watching a thriller the entire time, and you just didn't notice. Because even when I look back at it now, and when Leslie's explaining the film, I realize that it's like, oh shit, he's not talking about that survivor girl, he's talking about, oh, my head explodes.
Oh, me too.
Right? And that's when it dawns on Taylor. When she goes in, she tells everybody, look, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Everybody move. There's a dead guy. There's a guy going to kill everybody. The lights go out. And then that's when, the lights come back on. The girl comes running out of the basement. She's like, oh my god, she killed, my boyfriend, jock dude, as I was about to go down on him. Oh my god. And Leslie's like, and then Taylor's like, oh my god, he's moved up the schedule. We're fucked. Okay, pulls everybody out, goes to the van or the cars, and he's like, oh shit, all the cars are dead.
Yeah.
And Taylor was like, okay, fuck, of course, Leslie took all the spark plugs out of the fucking car. And that's when Leslie approaches. That's when he starts doing his thing. And then they run back into the house. They meet up with the survivor girl, the virginal survivor girl who's supposed to save them all. And they begin to find out that the virginal survivor girl is riding the shit out of her boyfriend.
And that it's not the first time.
Oh, by a long shot. It turns out that she's Daho.
Yes, she is.
So Taylor realizes like, oh my god, you're not a virgin. If Leslie finds out, we're fucked. We're all dead. And then she dies, like, trying to jump out the fucking window.
Yeah.
And, oof. And it takes a second of them kind of running around the house and figuring things out for Taylor to realize, oh, fuck, I'm the survivor girl. That's why this is planning out so perfectly for him. It's not that he's adapting his plan to account for us three. We were in it from the start.
Exactly.
And
which is so smart.
Right?
When you think of, movie concepts, I didn't even think that was going to be a possible ending. It just went right over my head, and when we finally got there, I was just taken aback, not only by the surprise factor, but I was like, kudos to the writers that wrote this movie. It's brilliant.
The whole premise is, it's like, well, what if the survivor girl in a slasher movie, like, not only knew her killer, but the killer walked her through step by step how he was going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's great. And it goes on, and they manage to get out of the house. Leslie kills everybody. Kills all the teenagers. Kills her film crew. Kills Holler. Well, he tries to kill Holler when he shows up. And her sound guy tries to defend her, and he just gets knocked unconscious immediately as he tries to man up to Leslie, and Leslie just drops him.
And you think Taylor, would have picked up on some of, the signs of everything going on. I mean, even Eugene, played by Scott Wilson, he gives her a bit of advice, to a survivor, when he's talking about how people try to run or they try to fight back. He tells her, run like a motherfucker until the sun comes out. And what does she do? She runs with the kids to the car. They run into the house. They run into the barn. It's like, if you just listen to Billy and just outrun Leslie, you probably could have survived the night.
Which is insane, because Eugene, or as a character, because he's the mentor character, he's the one we said was Billy, is very forthcoming about when, because Taylor asks, like, well, how does somebody survive with you? And he's very forthcoming with it. He's like, there's really no good way to survive these nights if we're doing our jobs right, but if you want to just forego the plot, you can just run.
Yeah, you don't, try to help your friends or help, people that are in danger. You just keep going. You don't look back.
Yeah, and it's like, in horror movies, or a lot of slasher movies, yeah, that's a good, really good way to survive these kind of movies. You just leave.
But it's also human nature that you want to help somebody else out when they're in danger, which is, how a lot of people in horror movies die, because they're trying to help somebody out, they're trying to fight back, and they get got.
And that is kind of Taylor's thing, where when she decides everybody's dead but me, and I'm going to help myself by empowering herself when she goes to the shed with some cock.
Yeah.
God damn it, Leslie. Even the pretentious bullshit worked. She goes in, she takes an axe, right, out of the shed, and she's like, okay, Leslie, let's fucking do this. And she goes into the apple orchard that the womb, the symbolic womb, the birth canal, that you're going to be reborn in on the other side. Leslie chases her down, and Taylor manages to get the upper hand. She actually whacks him with the axe, but of course the axe breaks right away because it's Leslie.
It's been rigged, yeah.
It's been rigged. But Leslie still goes down for a second to do the whole spooky, oh, you think I'm down, but when you walk away, I'm going to disappear. And he does that. And
he does pretty well, too.
Very well. Yeah, no, like 5 solid months of pure cardio and magician work will probably help you with that.
Yeah.
And then they go to like this cider shed where it has like an apple crusher and a grinder to make apple cider, where it's really weird that that's on the farm, but whatever. They're in an apple orchard.
They do. So, it's kind of supposed to be there. Fresh apple cider, apple juice.
Yeah. She goes in there, and Leslie comes in, and this is the final showdown. They fight. Leslie's getting the upper hand, and Taylor, through some smarts, clever play, being able to stab Leslie in the side with his own scythe, gets his head trapped into the apple vice.
And she just keeps turning that wheel until you just hear bones break.
Until you hear bones break. She lights the whole place on fire, leaves it there to burn.
I like that she puts lighter fluid on his clothes. Because when we're getting into, right before the kills start, Leslie's putting on his makeup before his mask. And he says that he puts kind of like a fire retardant in his makeup so that, if someone tries to throw, like, a match or,
something on him.
Flame, his face won't catch on fire. And she, obviously remembered that, so she lights his clothes on fire.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because did you watch until after the credits?
I did.
Right? Okay. And I think that was probably, like, the smartest, like, weird, like, well, why is he telling us this? And then at the end of the movie, you're like, oh, that fucking lotion he put on his face that was the fire retardant and it's supposed to be the anticoagulant.
Yeah.
He probably put that all over his body, and that's why he... So, Taylor burns it down. She runs outside. Doc Halloran shows up. Worse for wear. He's stabbed and bleeding. But the sound guy managed to survive because he was only knocked out. And they're all three there looking at Leslie burning up. And they're like...
And they're our final jump scare, Because Taylor walks out and she's screaming at the flames, but,
victoriously.
Victoriously. And, of course, it's, you have the score, so you don't really hear her scream. You just kind of see her scream and, because she's triumphantly survived the night. And she backs into Doc and the sound guy, where you get your last,
little jump scare.
Little jump scare.
And they're like, Leslie has kind of achieved his goal. He has become the legend. And it goes in, and then we have the credits roll, and it's of the security camera footage of, like, the mortuary as they're wheeling in Leslie's burnt body to the great song by, it's Psycho Killer by Oingo Boingo. Right, it's Danny Elfman's old band.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Psycho Killer? Huh.
Yeah. Psycho Killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Ba 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 ba. Better run away. And it just goes on. It's the full song, and it's great because it goes right into the movie. It's very thematic. It's this, and you're like, why are we watching this like mortuary where we're watching the coroner's office that they're bringing the body.
All I kept thinking was, that technician, I'm like, I would not have my back turned to this guy. Like, he just, slaughtered a whole bunch of people.
And it's great because as the final credits roll and you see Leslie's body lying there and the coroner's working on, like, papers with the back turned, you see Leslie sit back up.
He does a perfect Michael Myers sit-up.
Oh, and then it just cuts to black, and, like, that sequel bait right there, and it's like, oh, this movie's so good. It came out in like, it came out in 2006, and I don't think we've ever gotten a sequel to this movie.
I hope we get a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten one. It's been 14 years, and I'm pretty sure all the actors, well, at least Nathan Basil and Angela Gothals, who plays Taylor.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they've moved on from, like, this kind of movie, because this is a very low budget, like, independent film.
But you never know. I mean,
it'd be so nice to see them come back.
It's loved by a lot of people, so you would think, as the two stars, they might come back. You could do it where she thinks that, she's survived this night, she's outlived him, but really, he made it. He's kind of been watching her from afar. Kind of like, Michael and Laurie Strode.
It'd be so weird, though, because I think because then that gets into the traditional, like, slasher, like, genre ideology of the sequels, and it's because this movie is so, like, perfect as, like, this self-contained story. Mm-hmm. Even the little, like, sequel-baity jump scare at the end, that goes right in line with that meta thing of course this is going to have a sequel bait at the end. Mm-hmm. All these slashers have a sequel bait at the end.
Of course they do.
And it'd be so weird. I almost want to see, like, another one of these where it's a different, like, killer and a different crew, but then that might just be a kind of feel a little hollow.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes this movie work so well. It's the combination of this really smart, like, well-written, like, mockumentary, and it transforms into this slasher thriller at the end, and you realize that you were never watching a comedy. You were just... And it's so good. But I digress. I think I've made it pretty apparent that I love this movie. This is, in my echelon of, like, top slasher films, which is, in terms of, like, meta slashers, with your screams and all that stuff, I like this more than Screams when we're talking about meta slashers. But Boo, this was your first experience. I think I know you liked it, but where do you think this would rank in your horror movie fandom?
I'd give it 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10?
10 out of
See,
10.
I told you. You should listen to me more when I tell you to watch movies.
I'll try. We'll see your next pick. I may, not agree with you too much on your next one.
Oh, my next... if you want to spoil it for everybody...
No, we're not going to spoil it. It's gonna be a doozy.
It's gonna be a rough one to get through. I will applaud you. So, but yeah, I would say this is like 10 out of 10. Great movie, but I think it's weird because this movie I think it's good for like you and me because we're big into like slashers and horror movies and all that stuff. We appreciate its like commentation on tropes. We appreciate the characters, how much they fall in line with these, and all the references. This movie, I feel, gets better and better the more into horror films you are.
And it also, kind of goes along those lines of, you love horror, but these classic characters like Jason and Michael, Freddy, you're fans of their movies, but you're also fans of the killers.
Yeah.
They come back.
They're the main characters. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that this film kind of does perfectly. It is the perfect film for fans. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're watching it and you're not a fan of horror films and you're not a fan of those slashers and things like that, you probably won't get a lot out of it. I think that's probably why this film did so weird when it came out.
Yeah, I mean, its worldwide gross was $69,136. So it didn't make a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, its budget was only like $40,000.
Yeah.
Its budget was like $40,000, so this was a super low budget film.
Yeah.
In terms of like any kind of studio standard, $40,000 is not a lot. And then you have like, it's like it grossed $70,000. That's also not enough to get you a sequel.
No.
So it's so weird when you look at this movie where you're like, man, the writing's like on point. The
Mm-hmm.
directing's really solid. Because I'll say this, the directing's really good.
Oh yeah.
I'm surprised the guy didn't do anything else after this. And then all the actors like hit it out of the park. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised the gentleman who played Leslie. I keep having to go back. Nathan Basil. I don't know what else he's done after this. I don't because he looks familiar, but I don't think he's been in a bunch of stuff. Oh yeah, he's just been on
A lot of TV.
a lot of TV. That's probably why I recognize him so often.
Yeah, we've
Oh,
probably
he's a
seen.
oh he works post production. That's probably why. Oh yeah, he's wow, yeah, he's pretty much just on like television. He's so man, that's makes me kind of mad because he was like really good in that film.
Which is kind of great too, because you can't say, oh, I've seen him in this romantic comedy, I've seen him in this sci-fi movie. He's kind of just one of these people. I've never seen him before, and I haven't seen him again afterwards. So it kind of feeds into this character of.
It's the whole thing where it helps when you cast, I guess not no-name actors, but really lesser-known actors because it helps you get into the character more.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it feels kind of bad because he was like really good. I kind of wish he got a lot more work after that because I think he has a really good comedic timing and range.
Well, I mean, we're seeing that he's had more work after that, but not as a,
Leading man.
Leading man. So this may have been a thing where he kind of maybe wanted to do it like one time, just kind of put it out there, and I mean,
well,
in my perspective, I think he knocked it out of the park.
Oh yeah, like I think everybody in this film, even the paper thin paper thin victims,
Mm-hmm.
they're still good.
Yeah.
They play their trope to the hilt.
Mm-hmm.
And also Robert Englund is a fantastic actor,
Yes,
which
he
is really really weird when people are like, "Oh, it's Freddy Krueger." He only plays Freddy Krueger, but he's a classically trained like theater actor.
Mm-hmm.
Like
he's a treasure.
It's really weird when have you ever watched Robert Englund do like interviews or whatever about
Mm-hmm.
acting? He goes like, "Oh yeah, well you need to get into the psychology of the killer. Sometimes I'll go in, I'll do like exercises, and I'll try and become one with the character." And I'm like, "Bro, you're playing fucking maniac cop. What are you? What's the backstory you're doing here?" Like, bro, you're Freddy Krueger. You're popping one-liners and cutting up teenagers. And he's like, "No, once I put the mask on, I have to get into the zone. I have to become Freddy." And I'm like, "Bro, this isn't King Lear. You're fine." And it's great.
It's
Just
not. Freddy.
It's Freddy. Just literally just go out and watch Robert Englund interviews, and you'll know what I mean. Because that guy is deep. And yeah, I think that's what a good way to put it. This movie, on the surface, it's very much a kind of weird little detour in like slasher films and like meta slashers, but it's so good. It's deep as sin. It's fun. It's smart. It's funny, and this is why I highly recommend it. Because Scream is this idea done straight, and this is probably the look. Everything goes out the window. Everything is being thrown in. Let's really cut these slasher movies to pieces.
And it's kind of like, following Scream 5 or Scream 4's premises where, the murders are being streamed. So we're getting that in this movie where, the
somebody owes somebody some fucking money. That's what we gotta do.
Yeah, well, this one came out before Scream 4, so...
Yeah.
Don't want to say anything, but we're kind of in that same, thought process of, hey, we're jumping into the future, so not only am I going to be a legend, amongst all these killers, but we're going to have it where it's viewable. You can watch it on the news, you can see the documentary, except I don't know if I were, that professor getting that as, this is my film that I'm turning into you. A whole bunch of kids being murdered.
He's like, "Did you just turn in a snuff film?
Were you an accessory to a murder?" I had to get an A on the project.
I mean, you're getting an A. This is quality work. And we'll end it there. This movie, if Taylor turned this in as her thesis film, A+.
Yes.
A+ film. And I guess that will kind of round us out on this week of the Film Club podcast. Boo, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find us, follow us, and anything else we're going to be doing?
If you want to follow us for the latest information, I really need to write this down. Okay. If you want to follow us for latest episodes, follow us on Anchor or follow us on Spotify. And for, kind of behind the scenes and just bonus content, follow us on Instagram at the Film Club Podcast and on Facebook at the Film Club Podcast.
All right, and hopefully sooner or later we'll be able to spread us out and get you some sponsors. But until then, you can follow us and listen to our podcast on Spotify, Anchor.fm, and Google Podcast. But until next week, Boo, stay scared.